While easing or spring animations can make a big difference, there are other elements that are also important to get right. One of them is duration. The average human reaction time to a visual change is 215 milliseconds. So we can say that a duration between 200 and 300 milliseconds should be the sweet spot for most animations. The human processor model indicates that it takes anywhere between 70 and 700 milliseconds for our eyes to move. This means that the location of the element that is being animated should affect the duration as well. Hover transition should be faster than other animations as we are focused on the element already. Additionally, our eyes are quite sensitive to color changes, so we can use an even shorter duration for color and opacity transitions. As you can see, there are many factors that can affect the duration of an animation. At Vercel, we deliberately didn't have any rules around duration, because there are so many factors that can affect it. Instead, we used our judgment and experience to decide on the duration of an animation. My tip here is to practice and see how other apps do it. I will also touch on this topic in the walkthroughs later on, but for now, I can give you some general guidelines that I created for myself. So I use 150 milliseconds for hover transitions. For modals and popovers, I typically use 200 milliseconds for the enter transition and 150 milliseconds for the exit, combined with the right easing, of course. Anything else should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, in my opinion. So let's run through some examples of custom durations to give you a better idea. This was a hackathon project I worked on during my time at Vercel. It's a component that allows you to travel in time through your preview deployments. When you enter the time machine mode, we alter the view so that the current page doesn't occupy the entire screen. I used an ease in out type of easing here, and the duration is 1 second, which is mainly because the view change is quite big. Generally, larger animations require longer durations. Vol's enter animation has a duration of 500 milliseconds, even though I just told you that I usually use 200 milliseconds for enter transitions. Because it would otherwise feel too fast, as the easing curve is quite steep. You can see the difference between 500 milliseconds and 200 milliseconds in this video. Typically though, animations consist of simple enter and exit transitions, for which an ease out animation with a duration of 200 milliseconds is suitable. This should be your default. If it doesn't work, you will notice it and get better at noticing it over time. But when should we actually animate things? It's easy to start adding animations everywhere. The user then becomes overwhelmed and animations lose their impact. So we need to pace them through the experience and add them in places where they enrich the information on the page. The purpose of an animation should be to add context. To check whether an animation adds context, you can try to describe what benefit it provides to the whole experience. The easier this task is, the more context your animation likely provides. A good example is this animation I made for Vercel. It explains how V0 works. And while this example is arguably entertaining to watch, it's also insightful. Or this one from Clerk, where they use animations on hover to explain the concepts presented on the cards. Now it may seem like only animations that explicitly explain something are useful, but that's not the case. We can also use an animation to indicate a change in state, like with the App Store cards. Users can get annoyed by frequent animations. That's why when you think about adding an animation, you should consider how often the user will see it. I use Raycast's command menu a lot. It would be annoying and tiring to see the same animation hundreds of times a day. Same with keyboard interactions, which feel more mechanical. Animating this type of interaction can make your UI feel slow and disconnected from the user. Rauno Freiberg gave a good example by initially animating the active indicator and the addition and removal of elements from the list in his bookmarking tool. Given that he used it quite frequently, the tool began to feel slow to him. After removing the transitions, the app felt faster and more connected to the user's actions, as the interactions were instantly reflected in the UI. Animations are rarely delightful on its own. However, when used considerately alongside all other pieces of the interface, the whole experience becomes delightful. My philosophy on this topic is to incorporate animations that everyone expects, such as enter and exit transitions, and then sprinkle in some very well crafted ones to add context and delight. However, the quantity must be carefully chosen. It needs to be tasteful and elegant, or otherwise people will become tired of it, even if it's exceptionally well crafted.